I'm glad I can't really see you guys very well, because I gotta be honest, I'm not used to being around so many alpha males. I go for a lot of beta males. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable around men who could hurt me, which is to say, all men. But this new guy I'm seeing, he's great. He is the male equivalent of me. Gets asked all the time if he's gay. I gave him flowers one time, and I was like, ooh, sorry, is that weird? You're a straight guy. He's like, hey, any straight guy who doesn't like flowers obviously doesn't appreciate the fact that they look just like a woman. I'm like, oh, gay. It doesn't seem to bother him the way it bothers me. Someone calls him gay, he just calls them backwards. Someone calls me gay, I just call them back and say, Dad, that was a really hurtful voicemail. But thankfully, we both confirmed we were perfectly straight, because I was like, blah, at the thought of going down on a woman. And he was like, well, I love it. And he was like, blah, at the thought of going down on a guy. And I was like, yup. It's hard finding a guy who can put up with, my masculine side. Like, it seems to scare men if you can hold a hammer. Like, I found that out with one ex-boyfriend because I threw it at him. People don't seem to believe I have a feminine side. Like, if I show up to any event in lipstick, they're like, Maxie, barbecue sauce, right here. You got a little... I just don't really believe in the whole masculine, feminine paradigm. Like, I like to take men's things and make them my own. I've stolen 4 of his shirts so far. Like, I'm a tomboy, but I know how to be feminine. Any tomboys out there? Steal the horn. Good. Thank you. Like, I have a little black dress hanging in my closet for special occasions. My boyfriend saw it, and he was like, ooh, when do I get to see you in that? And I was like, oh, well, maybe if you're lucky, your Aunt Ruth will die soon. Savage, guys. No, some of you are still like, is the joke that she dates men? I'm very lucky that he's with me. It's like proof that you can be incredibly flawed and still be loved, as long as you're hot. I like him. Okay, I don't know if you guys are aware. Maybe you're not out in the world enough to see there's this new hybrid beta where it's sensitive but not weak. Like, I've dated way too many classic betas. Like, one ex-boyfriend told me I didn't compliment him enough. And that was a huge eye-opener. I was like, oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry. I had no idea that you were such a pussy. Like, I grew up surrounded by classic betas. I read Archie comics growing up. I don't know if you guys remember that. Classic beta. It's a 1950s comic where Archie is dating Betty and Veronica at the same time, and no one ever calls them on it because they're like, meh, he's harmless. Side note, my bandmate Kim confused two-timing with double teaming, and it concerns me that she still didn't think that Betty and Veronica getting two-timed was a big deal. Yeah, Archie gets away with it because he's like, oh, I'm just powerless against beautiful women. Archie, current day, seems like the guy who forgets to pull out and then is like, oh, you're beautiful and I'm just weak. I'm like, oh, yeah, you are. Ever have a guy finish too quick and he tries to save it by being like, oh, you're just irresistible. For the first second, I'm always like, aw. For the second, I'm like, hold up. I know for a fact that I'm resistible. I have been resisted many times. I remember once at a wedding, drunkenly begging this guy to sleep with me, and he just goes on my forehead, walks away. I'm like, dude, we're only second cousins. Another time, I threw myself at a personal trainer who did not want me. I went in for the kiss. His mouth sealed off like a locked door. No getting in. I pulled back. I'm like, no? He couldn't even speak. He was just, ah. I'm like, that's not a no.